You know all about communications. What is it really? And why has so much been written and said about it? Quite frankly, communications is the foundation of leadership. There are literally hundreds of ways we communicate, with speech, hands, eyes, body language, direction, the way we talk with others, the way we listen. All these and many more make up this thing we call communications. Let's review some very basic ideas about communications, and then we'll get into the specifics of some of the more troublesome forms of communication. Communication is more than talking. Your effectiveness as a supervisor depends somewhat on your verbal skills, your attitude towards people, your nonverbal gestures and signals, and certainly your listening skills.
Supervisors, one of the most important turnoffs for any employee you're responsible for is for him to give you a suggestion or give you an idea and you walk away and never come back. The most important thing you can do, even if it's a negative answer, if it's a no answer, get back to that employee and say, I'm sorry, we can't do it, it's too costly, or at this time it's not feasible, it's not in the budget, whatever. But never leave him stand alone with a question in his mind that you, as a supervisor, didn't answer.
When you communicate, you're telling the person you're communicating with a lot about yourself. The way you talk, the way you listen, the respect you show others, all this is communications. Your employees are listening to your words, but they are also very much watching what and how you do things. This is communications also.
If that guy complains about anything, if he stops the machine because he thinks it was leaking or registration was wrong, don't yell at him if he's wrong. You know, don't yell at him. Just listen to him, explain to him what it is, and that way he'll come back to you. And if he asks about a package, maybe the print might be off a little. Also, don't just go back and say, oh, go ahead and run it, you know, because he might not come back and tell you that on another one that you don't want to run. So just listen to what they have to say.
Be more nice and open to the communication, because the supervisor is always too busy, and when the employee is asking or need help, something, you say, okay, and they don't listen really well what they needed.
Making sure that you listen to your employees as well as giving them instructions. And
they learn your likes and dislikes, what turns you on and off, what upsets you, and how well you perform your job. That's also communications. Do you enforce rules? That's communication. Do you set the example? That's communication. Do you say one thing then do another? That's communications. Communications is a very complex thing, but it's also fairly simple in many respects. Consistency seems to be an important factor in effective communications. Consistency means your actions can be predicted based upon your past actions. If you're a person who listens to employees, then provides them feedback about what they told you, whether it's good news or bad news, and you do this consistently, employees perceive you as a good listener who will give them feedback. If you're a person who's in a good mood one day, a bad mood the next day, and sporadic in between, employees don't know how to take you because you're not consistent. They will either wait until they determine your mood that day, or they'll totally ignore you as much as possible.
I think one of the things that really throws people off is when you're never quite sure when you approach your supervisor whether they're going to be very helpful or going to fly off the handle at you or get mad at you. Some consistency, I guess, is...
Well, like I said, I'm still learning the ropes, but I think the main thing with me is I'm learning how to listen, because I tend to anticipate what the person is going to say and try to say, oh, I know what you're going to say, and jump right in with the solution, and they'll say, no, that's not what I wanted to say at all. I think if you listen to the person's problem and then wait till they're finished, and then you can deal with it in a much better way, I think that listening has got to be right up there. And then I think you need to be rational with your discipline and with the way you handle a solution. I don't think there's any need to jump out of control. When the problem is real minor, I think you should treat it in a minor way. I think if it's a major problem or a major complaint, it needs to be dealt with in a more major way. And I think a lot of evaluating has to be done not only in a personnel way, but in a work, to look at their work and really evaluate where the strengths and weaknesses are of that person. And let them know. I think you need to constantly let them know when they're doing well, and I think you need to let them know when they're not doing well so that they can improve. And when review comes along, they'll be ready.
You're communicating with your employees, either positively or negatively, but you are communicating. How about that nasty task of counseling employees when their behavior or performance is less than desired? Do you let it slide, hoping it will get better or a miracle will occur? That's communicating a negative image of your leadership abilities. If your employees know you to be fair and to treat everyone equally, then you're communicating that they will get a fair shake. If they see you demonstrate unfairness or allow some people to get away with something and not others, that's also communications. You can get the idea there are both positive and negative aspects of communications. One thing experienced supervisors know is no matter what you are, how you are, or who you are, your employees know about it. Good or bad, you can't fool them. Listen to employees. Give them feedback on their questions, suggestions, concerns, and their gripes. Good listening skills take a lot of effort and work, but the reward is worthwhile. There are basically 4 communication barriers or problem areas which tend to prevent good communications. 1, not recognizing the need to communicate. My people surely know this by now, or it didn't seem important to tell them that, are examples of one communication breakdown.
Knowledge has to be passed on. Meetings, staff meetings, there should be more staff meetings between supervisors themselves, and then again between the employees and supervisors, at least on a once or twice a month basis. And so you know what your employees are doing and what they need from you and what you need from them and what's going on in the business. What are you doing?
2, listen, but not really listening. You've all seen people listen to you talk, but you can see their attention is on something else. They're being polite, but you have that feeling they're waiting for you to stop talking so they can do something else. 3, not talking the same language. This isn't a language barrier per se. It's using words the other person doesn't understand or words that are above the listener's comprehension. Oftentimes, the way words are said determine their meanings.
Lack of communication with the people and with the mechanics.
4, lack of skill in communicating. Oral communications requires a great deal of skill because there are so many parts of communication. Hand gestures, facial expressions, tone of voice, listening skills, your personality, many skills. Written communications is also a big problem in the supervisory ranks, just as it is throughout the organization. Have you ever seen governmental memos or policies or procedures? Just trying to figure out what they're attempting to say is a major effort. It's not what people are told, but what they accept that counts. Usually we all make the mistake of thinking that communications is simply sending an idea. The sender actually thinks that the person he or she is communicating with is interested in what he or she is saying. That's not always the case. How do you ensure that one of your employees actually understood what you just said? Do you assume they listened intently, understood every single word you said, and have those thoughts locked clearly in their mind? A tool many supervisors use to make sure the employee understood what they said is to simply ask them to repeat exactly what it is you said. If you're consistent in asking this of your employees, their listening skills will improve 1,000%. Only when mutual understanding is achieved does effective communications take place. It's also wise when hearing complaints to repeat to the employee what the supervisor thinks he or she heard, to be sure the employee and the supervisor understand the complaint. This also gives the supervisor time to think and reply. How about some quick rules for good communications with your employees? 1. Share company news with your employees. It's really bad news to go to a meeting, learn what's going on, your boss tells you to pass the word, then the information is lost in a notebook or sitting in your things to do basket. 2. Conduct frank and open job evaluations with your employees. Of course, this is done in private, but tell it like it is. 3. Give compliments as well as criticism. One thing a lot of supervisors forget to do is give written compliments and praise. The rule of thumb is there should be a 2-to-1 ratio between written praises and disciplinary counselings. When was the last time you sat down, wrote a complimentary note about one of your employees, and put that in his or her personnel file? 4. Establish an open-door policy. Accept feedback, suggestions, criticism, complaints, gripes, then give the employee feedback on their communications. 5. Be fair and square with all employees. 6. Discuss situations. Don't argue. You're the supervisor. Arguments don't ever solve anything. Discussions open the door to solutions. 7. Make one point at a time. Discuss one point, reach agreement, then go on to another point. The shotgun approach to discussions won't work. And 8, use examples where possible to make a point. Remember, you're trying to communicate. Use all the tools you can.
Maybe a little more communication on what the final outcome has to be, rather than letting the goal be known more than just, okay, we're here, it's time to go to work again, we're going to put in 8 hours and go home. Make the goal a little more obvious, so that people know what they're trying to achieve, rather than just putting in another 8-hour day, day after day.
Above all, the most effective communications come when actions reflect the words. When your employees know this, you will have achieved effective communications. How do you communicate to reduce specific problems? Well, let's look at some examples. Productivity slowdowns are a fact of life. Everyone seems to be working, but things aren't cranking according to your plan. The most effective communications method to improve slowdowns is to get involved with your employees. If they know you're interested in them, you're providing support, direction, and you're doing your part to improve productivity, that's what will happen. Remember the Hawthorne studies? When management changed the lights, productivity increased. It wasn't actually the lights that improved productivity, but the employees' perception that management was interested in them that increased the productivity. You have to get involved with your employees. It doesn't hurt to compliment employees when they do a good job or increase productivity. This involvement is also called communications. How about those nasty rumors that seem to crop up on a daily basis? Anything you can do about those? Certainly. If you're the type of supervisor who informs employees on a regular basis of what's going on, the rumor mill is less likely to be active. From time to time, you may be privileged with confidential information. If it's confidential, keep it confidential. The worst thing you can do is tell someone something and then tell them it's confidential and not to tell anyone else. Passing along confidential information in this manner is like putting it on the bulletin board. When you get information, whether you believe it to be of value or not, it should be disseminated to your employees. Keeping them informed of what's going on is very important. It tells them you care about them. It tells them they are part of the company, and it tells them they are important. Lack of information leaves the door wide open for people who love to pass rumors. If you hear misinformation, clear it up with all employees quickly. If you hear a rumor and you don't have the correct information about the subject, you should also provide this to your employees. There are hundreds of examples, but the idea is to keep your employees informed of the information that should be known by all employees. Be truthful and factual, but communicate information as regularly as possible. It's a good communication skill, and certainly it's a very effective leadership trait. How about gripes and complaints? Any communication skills necessary to handle these problems? A gripe or complaint is a roadblock to the complaining employee. Again, we're talking perceptions, factual or imagined perceptions. Listen to the employee, investigate the facts, listen to what others have to say, then provide the complaining employee with a solution. Your answer is not always going to satisfy the employee, but you have an obligation to listen, to investigate, to check out the complaint, then make a decision. This decision must then be communicated to the employee. An employee complains about other departments not doing their job, which affects the extra work put back on his job. You listen, you investigate, you discuss the complaint with the other supervisors to see if it has merit, and then you make a decision. You explain to the complaining employee that you did investigate and, yes, the other department is creating extra work, but there are circumstances that cannot be changed. The other supervisors are aware of the problem and management is working on the problem. They know they're creating extra work for you and they appreciate the job you're doing to keep up with the workload. It's a problem we're trying to solve, and we ask your continued support, and we thank you for bringing this problem to our attention. This extra effort is noticed and appreciated. In most cases, the complaint is solved because the complaining employee was listened to, the complaint investigated, and the solution or decision was discussed with the employee. The most effective communications method to avoid the complaint was to recognize the extra work the other department was causing, then approaching this employee and telling them that you were aware of this and the company was taking steps to have it corrected. Certainly, there will be gripes and complaints that cannot be handled at the supervisory level. It's still your obligation to the complaining employee to listen, investigate, and communicate an answer back to that employee. Feedback is the most important. Lack of feedback to a complaint, suggestion, comment, or gripe is the worst thing you can do. You don't always have to give a favorable answer, but you must always communicate feedback to the employee. Be alert to symptoms of dissatisfaction and try to solve or at least communicate with your employees. Much time, energy, and effort will be saved, and your leadership abilities will be recognized. How do you effectively communicate to the unwilling? You know who we're talking about. The person who just doesn't fit in or is constantly making mistakes, demonstrating poor behavior, and so on. You try your best. When that doesn't work, you treat this person just like everyone else. And when their performance or behavior falls below expectations, you sit that person down and provide counseling, additional training, assistance, discussion about the problem, and you document this on paper. If this doesn't work, you follow your company's policies and procedures relating to suspension and terminations. You're not going to be perfect. The objective of good communications is to be as effective as possible with as many people as possible. Normally, most people respond very favorably to good communication skills. Those who do not, well, that's their problem. You, the supervisor, can do a lot to bring those people around, but you're responsible for all your employees. Don't let one individual take quality time away from the rest of your employees. You can learn a lot from your employees. All you have to do is listen, really listen, and care about what they're saying. Your actions are the most powerful communications tool you have. If you're a good communicator, not just a talker, your employees will know it almost immediately.
You know, communications is it's a lot like the weather. You know, everybody talks about it, but very few people understand what weather's all about. So when it comes to communications, if you want good communication, really good communication, as a supervisor, you need to take 1 day a month and work in an employee's job for a complete shift. That's right, 1 day a month. Now pick the worst job in your department. You do this every month and you'll find out how much your communications improve. Or I'll even go you one better. Why not have every staff person, from the president and VPs to accountants, engineers, personnel people, all the employees work in an employee job for 1 full shift? I guarantee you that'll open up communications like you wouldn't believe.
How do you do it? Listen. Compliment employees in front of others. Never criticize in front of others. Find them doing something right. Be frank and open to all employees. Listen, 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 and really listen. Use examples to make a point. Be fair with all employees. Don't play favorites. Don't argue, discuss. Listen. When employees complain, repeat their complaints to be sure you and the employee understand. Document. One last thing. Be sure to listen. Thank you.